Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 3734 AN. Today's date is September 18th, 2025, and the title of the episode is Fake News Trying to Convince the People the Fed is United Against Trump. Leverage. Let me ask you something. If you've built 100,000 or more in investments, do you really want all of it riding on the stock market? Think about it. Banks, billionaires, even entire countries are loading up on physical gold and silver. Why? Because when markets swing, real assets hold their value. That's why I want to tell you about Noble Gold Investments. They make it simple to own investment-grade gold and silver, the kind the big players are buying. And you can actually hold it in your hand or put it safely in your retirement account. You've worked hard to build your wealth. Isn't it time you protected it? Noble Gold is family-owned, trusted by thousands, and ranked number one in gold IRAs for 4 years in a row. Their precious metal specialists are standing by to answer your questions and walk you through every step. Simple, safe, and easy. Visit x22gold.com. That is x22gold.com. Or just click the link in the description. And remember, past performance may not be indicative of future results. Investing in precious metals involves risk. Consult your financial advisor before making investment decisions. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. Now, the deep state, the corrupt politicians, the private West Central Bank, the World Economic Forum. We can see that the Fed, as we know, they lowered the rate by a quarter point. And we kind of figured that they were going to do this. Trump and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent pretty much said, listen, we do see a rate cut in September, because I do believe what Trump and the Patriots have done here is they have trapped the Fed in all of this. Now, of course, the Fed, the fake news are all out there saying, hey, we're all working together, we're independent, and everyone agrees, everything looks great. But really, there's division in the Fed. And I think this is why Trump is going after Cook. This is why he brought Moran on there, because once again, I do believe it's about leverage. That's what this is all about, because Trump, he needs to take leverage over the Federal Reserve so he can transition us away from the central bank system that we're in today and move us into the parallel economic system. And you can see every step of the way, what is Trump doing? He's making deals around the world. And actually, the deals, they really benefit the U.S. I mean, if you go back in time, the deals that were made in the past always benefited the other country, never really benefited the United States. And if you look at what Trump is doing right now, he is now making deals, just like he made one with the UK right now, where U.S. firms are going to basically develop AI for healthcare in UK. So we're going to be selling them a product. Think about this for a second. And they're going to be buying that product from the United States, from all these tech companies. Think about what happened with NAFTA going back in time. Let's see. Oh, wait, all the manufacturers moved out of this country, moved into Canada, moved into Mexico. Everything was produced there and then shipped back to the United States. This time around, we're going to develop things here in this country, and we are going to sell the product to another country. And we could see how this is very, very different. So Trump and Starmer, they signed a U.S.-UK tech prosperity deal. U.S. firms led by Microsoft, including BlackRock, NVIDIA, OpenAI, Oracle, Amazon, and CoreWeave will invest $42 billion in the UK to develop AI for healthcare, quantum computing, and nuclear projects, which means the UK is going to purchase from the American companies. And once again, you could see this is the type of deals that Trump is now making. And when you look at what the Fed has done, where they lowered their rate by a quarter point, the new range, the federal funds range, is going to sit between 4 and 4.25 right now. And I do believe that what this is going to do is, yes, it will help the economy. It will ease a lot of the things that we are seeing today. But is this something that Trump and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent actually want? No. Remember, going back in time, going all the way back to the Biden administration, we were talking about how the job numbers and all the different statistical numbers were completely and utterly fake, and how the Federal Reserve has been making decisions using fake information. So if they're making decisions using fake information, and the fake information is trying to convince you that the economy is very, very strong, and you're actually making those decisions from that data, and the economy is truly weak and probably in a recession, what happens then? Well, you bring the economy to a place where people, I think, are feeling it today, where the economy is struggling right now. And I think this is why Trump is continually calling Powell too late, because everything has been manipulated. Everything has been set up in such a way where they thought they had the upper hand and they were going to bring the entire economic system down around Trump. And now that the evidence is coming out that the economy was worse off than anyone could ever imagine, jobs were not created, the GDP numbers are not what they said they were, and the inflation calculations, I'm going to say those are completely and utterly all wrong. And when you really look at this, people need to understand that everything the Fed was doing, it was based off of a lie. And the economy was never strong. You're seeing the results of Biden's economy. It doesn't happen the same exact day. It takes time. And what you're feeling, what you're experiencing is the result of Biden's economy. And when you look at the car dealerships, you can see they're struggling right now because the interest rates haven't been brought down. And the automobile manufacturers, they're struggling. When you look at the housing developers, you can say they are now struggling. Even the people trying to sell their homes right now, that existing homes, they are having a very difficult time because this is the aftermath of lying about all the data, making decisions on fake information. Biden actually put the country in a recession. Trump now is bringing it out of the recession. And this is why he's continually telling the Fed, listen, you're a little too late here, and I'm going to prove it to you. I'm going to bring someone in. They're going to redo the job numbers, and it's going to show that everything that you based everything off of is one gigantic lie. So what does the Fed do at this point? Do they say, oh, wait, it's all a lie? Yeah, we're going to have to bring it down 2 points. That's what they should do. But what did they actually do? They said, okay, then we'll bring it down a quarter point just to appease Trump. And actually, when you read the headline from AP News, you can see that they're now actually taking the narrative and they're trying to say that Trump is attacking the Fed and the Fed has to stay independent. And you have to remember the fake news they cover for the central bank system, because remember, this is all part of the criminal syndicate. And this is what the headline says. Federal Reserve shows unexpected unity, independence as it weathers Trump's attacks. And we said this a long time ago. I do believe that the deep state players, the central bankers, in the long run, they're going to try to hurt the economy in a way where they can blame Trump. I do believe this is their mission. They did this during COVID. They did it during 2020. All of a sudden, there was this virus that was released on the public by the deep state players. And all of a sudden, the stock market started to come down. And you have to remember, George Soros, he let everyone know back in January of 2020, oh, the market is overheated and it looks like it's ripe to come down. Well, I think everyone knew exactly what they were planning to do. They were going to sell to try to bring the market down, all the big players. And this is exactly what they tried to do. But they were completely and utterly shocked when the market didn't all of a sudden crash. They were expecting it to crash, but it didn't. And they were kind of pissed off about this. They didn't want this to happen. They wanted the market to completely and utterly crash. So basically, you could see that back then, already planning to blame this all on Trump, and it didn't work. So let's talk about our health. A 2025 survey found that over half of U.S. adults are concerned about how their skin is aging, and 40% fixate on random wrinkles or dark spots. If that sounds like you're not alone, more and more people are noticing visible changes in their skin far earlier than expected. This is why I use my secret anti-aging weapon, and I'm obsessed with the changes I've noticed in my skin. It provides my skin with 5 must-have types of premium collagen needed to reduce wrinkles. Since taking it, I've experienced smoother skin, more elasticity, fewer fine lines, and more youthful glow. Plus, it mixes smoothly with my morning coffee or tea with no taste or clumps. Be sure to grab a bag of Ageless Multi-Collagen now while it's 51% off only at healthwithx22.com and help take years off the clock. Plus, by ordering now, you're also guaranteed to get free VIP live health and fitness coaching for life, a free ebook titled The 14 Foods for Amazing Skin, a 60-day satisfaction guarantee, and free shipping. Once again, that website is healthwithx22.com or just click the link in the description. They kept going with COVID. And eventually, the narrative that the fake news that Biden and the rest kept using was, oh, the economy is terrible because of Trump. Oh, the economy is terrible because of Trump. And I do believe they're going to try to do the same exact playbook. I think they're going to use the same exact playbook this time around, because you have to remember what Biden said when he was leaving the White House. He says, I'm handing off a very, very strong economy to Trump. And you have to remember, the whole thing was one gigantic lie. So the only reason you would do this is because you're trying to set him up, because you're going to say, oh, look, he crashed the economy. And that's what they tried to do from the very, very beginning, but it didn't work. And now they're going to be struggling because, once again, the Fed now is trapped in all of this. And you could see the fake news they're trying to cover for the Fed. They're trying to convince everyone that the Fed is completely and utterly independent, which, once again, they're controlled by the deep state players and many people who are unelected above the Federal Reserve. So when they say they're independent, they are not independent whatsoever. The Kobesi letter on X put this out and said, the Fed is highly divided. In today's Fed dot plot, 9 out of the 19 Fed members saw the need for 50 basis points of additional rate cuts in 2025. However, 6 out of 19 Fed members believe 0 additional rate cuts are needed this year. Meanwhile, one member thinks the Fed will hike this year, and one member thinks the Fed is going to cut 125 basis points by January. This is by far one of the most divided Fed boards in years. Now, we have the fake news trying to convince everyone, oh, they're all banding together. Look at their independence. They voted for the 25 basis points. Actually, I think Trump and Scott Bessent already told us that they were going to cut the rates in September. They already knew what was going to happen because they trapped them in all of this. And right now, you can see this is why Trump needs the leverage over the Federal Reserve. That's the whole point of all this. And this is why Trump went ahead and he filed an emergency request with the Supreme Court to make Lisa Cook fired again. And he's not going to let up. He's going to continually push and push and push to the very, very end, because in the end, he needs another Fed governor to control the situation. And I'm not saying he's going to replace every single one of these individuals, but he needs enough of his people who sees it his way on the Fed Gov board to push the economy where it needs to go. And I do believe he's now setting the stage. He's preparing the economic system where we're going to move completely, probably into a tariff constitutional gold system. And we are no longer going to use the central bank. And down the road, we can see that it might play out in a way where little by little, he chips away at the central bank and moves the entire country one stage at a time away from the central bank. In the beginning, it's no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. Then he moves a little bit further and saying, okay, let's make it so people can purchase items with Bitcoin and you're not taxed if you're spending $600 or less, which allows people then to use an alternative currency. And as he keeps going, he mentioned, let's audit Fort Knox. Eventually what he's going to do, he's going to bring gold into the entire situation, because what he's doing right now, he's chipping away at the Fed slowly but surely. And as he gets his people in place and the rates come down, and it shows the Fed doesn't know what the hell they're doing, and the economy really starts to take off, because from December until the first quarter of 2026, just by lowering the rate a quarter point, no, it's not going to make the economy take off and it's going to look absolutely incredible, but it's going to ease a lot of the pressures, and you're going to see things start to pick up a little bit. Probably car sales will pick up a little tiny bit. House sales will pick up a little tiny bit. And people will say, well, wait a minute, if the Fed just lowered a quarter point and things are starting to take off, maybe the Fed is completely wrong about this. And I think that's what people are going to say. And think about it. Since they were wrong about the job numbers and they were basing everything on inflation and job numbers, when they look at the job numbers and they're saying, okay, we kept the rates steady, we didn't lower it in the amount that we should have because that's what the job numbers were telling us. Now we come to learn that the job numbers are a lot worse than what the Biden administration actually gave us. We should really be much, much lower, probably about 1.5 or 2 points. You think the Fed should be doing something like this, but they're not, which is very, very interesting. And I think what Trump is doing right now, he's going to gain leverage and show the people, look, the Fed, they don't know how to do their job. They don't know how to run the country. They have no idea what they're doing. With all these, I mean, we have tens of thousands of PhDs in the Federal Reserve. Not one could figure this one out. Not one could say, hey, by the way, you know what? I think these job numbers are really fake, because I calculated the job numbers and I was looking at the data and it doesn't seem right. I mean, look, we have many, many statisticians and many people in the financial world looking at these numbers and they're saying, you know something, these don't make any sense. This is what the job numbers should really be. So you're trying to tell me that the Fed, with all the PhD, tens of thousands of PhDs, supposed to be running the country, keeping everyone employed, keeping the value of the fiat currency steady. They couldn't figure this one out. Or did they have a completely and utterly different agenda? It reminds me of like the FBI when Cash says, listen, in the last 8 months, we were able to, arrest 27,000 criminals, shut down 300 human trafficking sites, and so forth and so on. When you look at the FBI, what were they doing before? Think about that for a second. Were they on a completely different mission? I think the Fed was on a completely different mission. I think that's exactly what they were doing. And when you start to look at what has been happening over time, you can see that the Federal Reserve note has been losing value, and it's been losing value very, very rapidly. I mean, right now, the U.S. dollar has lost over 10% of its value this year. So let's think about that for a second. What we have been witnessing, what we have been seeing this entire time is the fiat currency failing. And we've seen this before going back in history. Every time the central bank's fiat currency fails, because what happens? The corrupt, what do? They continually borrow and spend and spend and spend, which means they dilute the currency. It loses value, and this accelerates over time. And as it accelerates over time, the system comes crashing down. Why do you think the deep state players want a great reset? Why do you think they want to bring down their own system? Now, they don't want to bring down the system saying, hey, by the way, we brought down the system. Yeah, the Federal Reserve is responsible for this. The deep state players are responsible. No, they want to bring down the system, but they want to blame it on somebody else. They want to blame maybe Russia with a cyber attack. They want to blame Trump, saying, oh, it was because of his tariffs. They want to blame Trump, where they could say, hey, Trump was interfering with the Fed. The Fed is supposed to be independent. And now the Fed is not independent because of what Trump is doing. He's attacking the Fed. And we, push back as much as we possibly could. But now he lowered it a quarter point. And when the economy all of a sudden falls apart because some reason or another, most likely not because of what Trump has been doing, it's because maybe there's an event or something else that occurs that they actually push, they're going to try to blame this on Trump. They did this during 2020. Actually, they tried to do it back in 2018, 2019 when they were raising the rates. So I do believe that they're going to try this once again, and they're trying to keep this narrative alive. And you can see the fake news. They're protecting the Federal Reserve, as they always do. And you can see those corrupt in D.C., they protect the Federal Reserve. But I think in the end, everyone is starting to learn what the Fed really is and what it really doesn't do and how it really hurts the American people every step of the way. And I think Trump and the Patriots, what they're doing right now is they're proving it to the American people. Because remember, as soon as the economy takes off, all eyes are on the Fed. They're screwed. Game is over. And even if they try to bring the economy down, Trump, he already has certain things in place to keep the economy continually operational. Remember, he's operating outside of the central bank system. Yes, he's still using the fiat currency, but I do believe he's prepared and ready to switch over to the alternative currencies if he has to at a moment's notice. Now, I think he would like to do this gradually. I think he would like to take this one step at a time to move people away from the Federal Reserve. And maybe that's what he's going to be doing in 2026. Maybe he'll be removing the income tax for those people making $100,000 or less. Well, that group of people, they're now separated from the Federal Reserve. And then you take the next group and the next group. Soon, when no one's paying into the Federal Reserve and no one's dependent on the Federal Reserve, and maybe he even, puts out an executive order saying we will no longer borrow from the Federal Reserve and will only take the money from this new parallel economic system where we're bringing the money in from the tariffs. We have a finite amount of money. This is what we're going to use. Now, of course, he has to cut down the government quite a lot more. I mean, he hasn't finished yet, and he really has to shut everything down. Now, is this going to happen before the midterms? I don't think so. I think he still needs those individuals in the midterms to be on his side so he could pass certain laws. And I think he needs to basically detach us from the central bank world, because once we're detached from the central bank world, I do believe this is when he can really shift us away. But I think what he's going to do is he's going to chip away at the Federal Reserve and basically detach as many people as he possibly can, make sure that we don't borrow from the Federal Reserve, and continually cut the government And this is going to continually happen. And I think this is really going to accelerate the last part of his presidency, where he gets control of the House, he gets control of the Senate. We have patriots in place to pass certain laws that he needs. And I do believe this is really going to take off. So basically, what he's doing, he's building the foundation right now, and he's building the structure of his building to make sure when the time is right, we can really move very, very quickly into the new system. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.